What would you do if you had all the time in the world to help animals? Let's say you wake up tomorrow, you no longer have to go to your job, and you can fully commit yourself to improving the experiences of pets and people in need in your community. What might it feel like for you to navigate through life, knowing that you're able to dedicate more time to making this kind of impact? What kind of roles would you take on in the community? Would you want to work at a shelter? Would you want to volunteer with the Street Dog Coalition? I just want to invite our audience to kind of imagine a world where we don't have to work paycheck to paycheck and we have the time, energy, and commitment to spend helping pets and people receive the care they deserve. So these are some of the questions and ideas that we're going to explore today on the Street Dog Podcast, brought to you by the Street Dog Coalition. We are a national nonprofit providing free veterinary care and related services to pets of people experiencing or at risk of homelessness. I'm your host, Daria Tavana, and I'm also the director of development at the Street Dog Coalition. And I'm really, really excited to introduce our guest today. You can't see it, but she's wearing an OG Street Dog Coalition shirt. There you go. That's how you know she's a real one. Woo! Our guest today is Meredith Vaught, a passionate volunteer and monthly donor with the Street Dog Coalition. With a strong background in nursing, Meredith has been a cornerstone of our Fort Collins street clinics for longer than we can even remember, where she plays a crucial role in providing care for pets and their guardians in need. Her deep commitment to the human animal bond drives her work. And today she's going to share a bit about her inspiring journey and the impact of community involvement in our mission. So, welcome to the podcast, Meredith. Woo!
Thank you. I think we should just stop now. I just like this. And, thanks for the introduction. We're done.
That's it. That's it. Just the glorious introduction. Like
Exactly.
I
Just
really
the
appreciate
accolades.
just the accolades, which is funny because I know that I've only scratched the surface of your accolades as a human being, and as just a compassionate individual on this planet. And it's so funny. I really love to hype up our guests with these introductions. So whenever someone says, "Wow, I feel really cool," or "Whoa, that was awesome," it's like the best response ever.
Well, that's true.
Meredith, this is amazing. So, as I mentioned, you are an incredible volunteer. You're an incredible donor. You're really someone who has, all the different ways that you can get involved with our mission. You have certainly done it, and you've done it with class, style, and commitment. And I'm just really excited to have you here today. And I know that a lot of our supporters, they are individuals who go to our clinics in Fort Collins. So it's really exciting that today we have a face that many people will probably recognize in watching this episode. So, Meredith, big thanks again for being here. And my first question for you is, how did you get here? What inspired you to become a volunteer with the Street Dog Coalition? How did you first get involved?
Well, I was on the board of a local animal shelter for a long time. It was at least 8 years. And it was time to hand that baton to somebody else because you always need fresh blood and fresh ideas and fresh donors. And I was actually, we have a bank here, First Bank, which has Colorado Gives Day, which is for local nonprofits that you could go through and say, oh, this is interesting and I want to donate. One of them was for the Ladybug Fund. And I had never heard of the Ladybug Fund. I thought, well, this is interesting. And what it was a fund for people who needed primarily emergent veterinary care, but were unable to afford it. And I thought, geez, if I want to give to anything, I want to give to this. So I did. And then I started thinking, well, who are these people? So I sent an email. This was a long time ago, so I'm trying to remember, but I sent an email and then I heard back from Katrina Weschler, who's now our executive director. And we got together for, this is when Katrina had time to do things like this. We got together for breakfast and she told me all about it. She knew my background. So the first thing she said to me was, would you like to be on the board? And I said to her, basically, that's the last thing I want to do. But what I do want to do is be boots on the ground, and I want to help you in any way that I can in your clinics. So
Wow.
that's how it all got started.
Wow, and, Katrina is not only the executive director, former volunteer turned executive director, she is also the podcast's biggest fan. So I know that Katrina is gonna be listening to this episode, like, smiling with gratitude for you and also maybe longing for a time where she was able to just hang
Exactly,
out
where she
and
could actually meet somebody for breakfast. So true. I'm sure you're right.
That's amazing. Yes, yes, yes. That's really fabulous. I also love that you were like, you know what? I don't want to join the board. I just want to volunteer because I think that so often, when you find a mission or a cause you care a lot about, there are so many different ways to get involved. It can kind of feel overwhelming. So for you to know for sure, um, what you wanna do, and, so often I'm kinda going all over the place here, but so often when people wanna get involved in the Street Dog Coalition or another place that I volunteer at, an animal shelter, I like to ask them, like, How do you wanna feel while collaborating with our organization?" So to me, it sounds like you really wanted to feel like you could make an impact, see the impact you're making directly, be there with the people that you're helping, so I just really appreciate that you identified like how you wanted to feel, and you chose a role that aligned with how you wanted to feel. Does that sound true to you?
That is it's so good that you asked that question because that's probably the most important question you could ask a potential volunteer is
Mm,
how do you want to feel doing this? What is going to feed your soul
yeah.
while you do this? The other reason that I was really leaning towards clinical is my background as a nurse practitioner, and when I started was at the Murphy Center, um, which helps people who are homeless and home insecure. And we had a One Health model. So we had a medical doctor, a physician's assistant, and we had residents. And I used to work for a residency program from CU, University of Colorado here. And one of the things I thought might be helpful is that I could kind of triage in my mind. Like, you
Nice.
start talking to a client and you're like, you know what? They're diabetic. They haven't seen a doctor in a year. Let's do this too. So I thought my clinical background would be helpful in the One Health model.
And look at that. You thought right. It has been.
Few times, yeah.
Yeah, I know our Fort Collins clinics, Fort Collins is where we started as an organization. We call
Yeah,
it
it's
our
the mothership.
the mothership,
It
yes, that's
is, right.
exactly right. It's the mothership, so we're really able to help not only, we have the resources at these clinics to help not only pets, but also, their people as well, and it's because of volunteers like you, it's because of our community partners, folks at the Murphy Center, it's really, of all of our clinics, of all of our teams in over 60 cities across the country, our team in Fort Collins continues to really raise the bar in terms of impact. So, of course, Meredith, you have so much to do with that, and we can't thank you enough. And I know that not only this is why you are one of our favorite people because not only are you awesome, fun, hilarious, and just great. You donate your you donate your time by volunteering, but you're also a member of our monthly donor club, which is fantastic. Big hard shout out to our monthly donor club. And actually,
Mhm.
I should say exactly, I should
Well,
say
you
that our this is some insider information here. Our monthly donor club in the coming months is getting a full revamp. We're renaming it the Unconditional Love Club,
I love
rolling out
that.
a bunch of new perks, all this good stuff. So Meredith, be on the lookout for more information regarding that. That aside, can you share with us why you choose to support the Street Dog Coalition in this way and how you believe that this kind of consistent funding impacts our work on the ground?
Well, I'm gonna come. at this from kind of a tangential place.
Let's do it.
And I hope I say this correctly, but I know, a lot of cities have homeless people
Yeah,
or home insecure, and you see them with their animals. And those of us who just have this huge heart for animals just wonder, God, are they getting care? How are they doing? Or where are they sleeping? And we feel this way about the people too, but we are the people who also feel that way about the animals.
sure.
And sometimes I know that people are a little reticent to give money straight on to these people for whatever reasons they have.
Sure.
I'm not here to judge anything or anybody, but I am here to say that Street Dog, you donate to Street Dog, and this is what you're getting. You're getting an exam for their animals. You're getting vaccines for their animals. You're getting spay neuter vouchers, free spay neuter vouchers for their animals. You're getting dental referrals for their animals. And then you're also, in some places, getting help for the other end of the leash. But that's why I think Street Dog is so important and so impactful, because we are able to do that straight on. And we
Mhm.
are almost 100%, we are a nonprofit, obviously, but donor driven.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
That's such a my gosh, we just get a billboard to play that sound clip on loop.
that's her elevator speech. And but it's true, it's all true. And boy, if you guys could be at one of our clinics. And the other thing I want to say is our volunteers, they're so heart forward. And we have a lot of social workers at our clinics too that kind of teach people how to maintain boundaries, but yet be helpful. Um, if you could see how respected everyone is who walks in the door,
Yeah.
which in my mind is the most important thing, the most impactful thing in caring for clients, is that
Mm.
respect and care and doing what you can to help them what they need at that moment.
Oh, that's such a great point, and I totally agree. I think sometimes, individuals are maybe reluctant to provide direct financial support to people who are living on the street for whatever reason, for
Yeah.
from maybe their own past experience. And I think that while sometimes it is perfectly acceptable and okay and actually needed to provide financial support directly to people who are living on the street. I like to think of, kind of like what you said, when you support an organization like ours, when you support any organization working to protect the human animal bond, working to provide services to people living on the street, you are, you are kind of, you're playing a role in the systemic evolution or the systemic change that these organizations work to create. So, does that make sense? While it is great, I think, to give food to a person living on the street, bring pet food to an animal living with a person on the street, or even provide monetary help, I think that it's also really important to support organizations like ours who are working to find, solutions to some of these problems in the long term, and also working to provide recurring support to these individuals. So I really appreciate your passion for our organization and for helping us create systemic change and for helping us, getting us to a place where we can show up for these individuals in Fort Collins every week and make sure that they feel seen and felt and heard and secure. And it's also no surprise to me that you do what you do because of your background in nursing. So, my question is, you have this strong background in nursing, you're passionate for the human animal bond. How do you see this, your experience as a nurse, your experience as a giver, as a caretaker, how does that influence the work that you do at our street clinics?
Well, I think I kind of just touched on it, and that's really the respect factor
Mm,
that, and I always felt this way. I always worked for low income clinics. That's all I ever did.
nice.
And people they just want to be respected. They want to be heard and validated. And a lot of times you're doing that through their pet.
Mm,
I mean, that this pet, I mean, I could go on and on about what pets mean to homeless and home insecure. I mean, that's probably a whole other podcast. But you're caring for them by caring for their pet. And
mm,
you probably could say that about anybody, but,
yeah.
particularly so because it's so challenging for them to get consistent care or even just one-time care. You're that is and it's the same with humans, it's the same thing. There's no difference because really we're caring for their owners slash guardians as well.
Mm,
Y you
yeah.
know, you we one thing about Fort Collins is we also do clinics at 2 housing, they provide housing for the homeless, and, I don't know a lot about how people are chosen to be there, but a lot of them have their animals, and we go and I just was at one at, Mason, Place, and it was the coolest thing because, they're so excited you're there. They bring their animals down, and we do whatever we need to do. A lot of them we saw them last year, so we're excited to see them. But the way that everybody interacts, like, "Oh, this dog doesn't get along with this dog, so don't do that, but this one does," and there's such a micro system of what's going on that you see that these people really love being there. They love their
Mm.
pets. You're so happy that they're housed, and it's kind of you when you go to places like that, you're just breathing a sigh of relief. You wish that every single homeless or home insecure person had that opportunity.
Wow. That's amazing. The way you described that made me feel like I was there. And it must be so interesting. And I've noticed that as well. I am located outside of Philadelphia, so I've been able to volunteer alongside our team in Philadelphia. And it really is these clinics become these small communities of animal lovers, of people who openly talk about their fur babies like they are their actual babies, of people who have had oftentimes such rough experiences in their life. And this is not just the clients we serve. Sometimes the veterinarians who are providing these services have lived experience. Some of them were formerly homeless. Some of them are just going through a lot personally, experiencing burnout. So it really is this beautiful opportunity for our clients, our volunteers, our veterinarians, our team leads, our social workers to come together and to, I don't even want to say like put their trauma aside because a lot of times the trauma is just kind of laid out to bear. Once you're able to gain the trust of the person that you're serving, it becomes, you really kind of open this can of worms. And I've noticed that myself. Like once, a lot of times our clients might be a little bit hesitant. I know in the past, clients have feared that like we might take their animal away from them, which is, of course, like the last thing we want to do. But once they see that we are in this with them, that we have more in common with them than we have, not in common with them, I really see them open up. I see their eyes light up. I see them oversharing information about their personal lives, what their pet's stool looked like 2 weeks ago. So it's like, it's this,
Humans do the same thing, by the way.
there you go. Exactly. It becomes this like support group for everyone involved. Have you noticed that?
Um, yes, absolutely. I mean, it's almost like our roles are very fluid, like we become social workers, the social workers are interested in what's going on medically. I mean, it just kind of there's a lot of fluidity
Yeah.
when in this kind of a clinic. The other thing I wanted to have the opportunity to talk about, if you don't mind,
Please.
is what the function of these pets are for our clientele.
Let's talk about that. Yeah, please.
Because it's something I really like to talk about. Sometimes I will get the feedback that, well, I don't understand why homeless have, if they can't take care of themselves, why are they trying to take care of an animal? And I will agree with that sometimes. Sometimes they're right. Sometimes I'm feeling the exact same way, like, God, maybe we need to like think about another option here. But for the majority, and I really mean the majority of people that we see, this is their successful relationship.
Mm,
This is the best they are with this animal. And the other thing too, and I know you'll find a lot of pit bulls out there. Well, first of all, I'm like 180-degree change fan of pit bulls, but that's a whole another podcast too. But a lot of times they feel like, and they usually are not like this, but they're kind of protective. They allow them to sleep while someone is watching over them and someone is watching over their possessions.
mm,
I mean, think about that. They're very vulnerable.
yeah.
And this allows them not to be as vulnerable to have that animal that's really taking care of them.
Mm,
So it's really a two-way street. And the majority of the clients that we have, they've got old animals. I mean, they've had them for 10, 12 years since they were puppies.
yeah.
So they're doing a really good job with taking care of them. And finally, oh shoot, there was one other thing I was going to say about it, which is probably the most important thing to me, but it'll come to me. Um, you just it's I hope that helps give some insight from a volunteer perspective of what we see as far as the relationship with these animals.
Absolutely. No, that's so helpful. I think anyone who is coming to our clinics, they are good pet parents because they're there. They're good
Oh,
pet
I know.
parents.
Wait,
Did you remember it? Did you
did remember the other thing, and this
lay it
is
on me?
super, super important in my opinion. A lot of times they have these animals because they saw them being mistreated.
Ah,
And I can't tell you, and I know if my fellow volunteers and clinical people were here with me, they would say, yes, you're right. That's absolutely true. They'll say, hey, I didn't like what was going on. This person wasn't paying attention to them. They were doing drugs, they were doing something. And they feel this empathy like, well, I'm going to do this. And they do. And so that's, probably the third thing I have found why the impetus for pet ownership slash guardianship.
yeah, that's such a great point. And I've seen the same thing at our clinics, and I've noticed that sometimes the individuals, the clients that we have, they want to give this pet that they rescue a second chance at life. And it
Exactly.
sounds so romanticized, but I'll say it anyway. Oftentimes, the individual, the client, gets a second chance at life themselves
Yep.
because they have this connection to this animal. They have this responsibility for this animal, and they have this unconditional love that they're kind of surrounded by 24/7 because they rescued this animal. So it becomes this symbiotic relationship. And I think that's, why that bond is so strong and why that love becomes so contagious. They show up with their pet at these clinics, and I have never seen people more bonded with their animals than I've seen at our clinics. It's
Right.
it's unreal. Like my neighborhood, I live in, like a middle class neighborhood. I see people walking around their neighborhood, walking their dogs, and they are just like on their phone, disconnected, don't care. I'm making generalizations about my neighbors, so I hope do not listen to this podcast. But
In case
it
you're
is
one of my neighbors, this is not you.
my other neighbors. But
Right.
It's so true, and then I go to our clinics and these people just, like, loving on their animals, they don't let their animals out of their sight, they wanna tell you their animal's favorite smell, color, toy, this, that, like, it's unlike anything I've ever seen literally anywhere else, that kind of connection, that kind of, the healthiest kind of codependence you could imagine. It's
Right. No,
it's
I
it's
totally agree with you. It is the healthiest codependence.
Yes, yes, I didn't know healthy codependence existed. I say that as my cat is passed out on my lap. Um, we are both codependent upon one another. So my last question for you, Meredith, is can you share with me like what what changes or what initiatives would you love to see implemented in the Fort Collins clinics? I know that when we last connected, privately, one on one, you had a couple ideas, you had a couple questions. So, if if you had a wish list, what would be at the top of your wish list for our clinics?
Well, I've been thinking about this, and it's really more of a entire community wish
Mm,
list.
yeah.
And I know if Katrina's listening, I know if any of my colleagues are listening, they're gonna agree with this. We have a really large challenge with domestic violence shelters
Mm,
and overnight shelters because a lot of them will not allow pets.
yeah.
And that feels to me that that is should be our next stage, our next initiative. Because as we all know, what it does is it leaves the victim at risk because they won't leave their animal.
Hmm.
It leaves them at risk because of weather issues, and exposure because they won't leave their animals. And when you think about it, would you? I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I would
Absolutely
not
not.
leave my dogs
Nope.
to and plus sometimes there is a culture of mistrust. And we could say, okay, no, we will take your dogs and we will put them in the Humane Society, but they're like, no, been there, done that,
Right.
or my friend has been there, done that. I don't trust you. I'm not going to do that. So I'm sure there are a lot of things that I'd like to see happen, but those to me feel like the most paramount that we need to work on
Mhm.
next.
I so appreciate you saying that, Meredith. And in looking at our goals for the next few years, I certainly will not speak on the behalf of the organization with my boss listening. But I know she feels the same way in that, like, if we had more I think if we had more maybe more funding, if we had more of a capacity to work in greater collaboration, more so than we're already doing with organizations like Red Rover, just to name one of the organizations that are really working on, policy change, working on making changes at the local level, in regards to housing, especially opening up these opportunities. I think that's something that we definitely would do, and I can also, I can also imagine that that is something that as our organization continues to grow, as our mission begins to evolve, we're coming up on 10 years of the Street Dog Coalition. I
Um,
can totally see that being something that we start to focus our efforts on even more because, like all nonprofits, we imagine a world where we don't have to exist, where our organization has solved the
exactly.
problem,
We're in the
right?
business of putting ourselves out of business. Every
Yeah.
nonprofit is that's exactly right.
And I
We're all happy to retire and move on to something else.
Yes. Yes, yes, and I really feel like, part of putting ourselves out of business, has to be making a change at, the systemic level. Making sure that individuals aren't unhoused so that they don't need our services, right? This is all like blue sky, utopian wishful thinking here. But I just want you to know that that is a fantastic suggestion. I wish we could run with it tomorrow. And I do see a world myself personally, I do see a world, and I know Katrina does too, where we have grown so much, we've expanded our team so much, we've secured so much funding from people and people like you and organizations who have, a passion in their heart for our mission, just like you do, where we are able to really focus on creating change, I guess really focus on the root cause of the issue. So instead of just treating the symptoms of homelessness, really focusing on making sure that the individuals that we serve are not homeless and can remain, under a roof with their pet as they deserve to. So
Everybody deserves that.
absolutely, absolutely. So I really appreciate that suggestion, Meredith. And I also want to give a big shout out again to Red Rover, especially Katie Campbell, who's the CEO and president of Red Rover, former podcast guest, often tuning in live to this podcast. Katie Campbell and their team over at Red Rover is doing incredible work. Right now, they're actually doing amazing rescue work after Hurricane Helene. But they have a 25 by 25 by 2025 plan where they are working diligently to make sure that working diligently to retrofit some housing and domestic violence refuges to allow them to be able to accept pets, and also trying their best to make sure that new housing that is constructed that comes up in their communities across the country, different places they're serving, that those housing facilities are also positioned to be able to allow pets. So, oftentimes it's a shame because these policies are hard and fast, and frankly, they don't make sense a lot of time. And there's really no reason for a lot of these places to not allow pets. So, what Katie and her team is working on is making sure that um, individuals who are fleeing from domestic violence situations, gender based violence situations, have a place to call home with their pets. So, just big shout out to Red Rover for living our Street Dog Coalition dream right now.
Yes, we
That's
don't need to
awesome.
hear, well, we don't do this because we never have before.
No,
That's
no, no.
yeah, moving on.
Moving on, that's right, moving on and moving up. And again, I speak, for myself, and I know Katrina feels this way too. We would love to play a bigger role in the affordable housing movement, in the co-sheltering movement that allows pets and people to stay together. So that's awesome, Meredith. Meredith, this has been such a cool conversation. You are life goals in the flesh. I'm gonna be as cool as you when I grow up one day, Meredith.
The key is don't grow up, and
Yes,
then that works.
I love that. Oh, Meredith, I want to thank you again so much. I feel like most of these episodes, I'm usually just listening and smiling and nodding, but I felt like I talked a lot this episode, and that's because you are just so fun and so inspiring. And you obviously, you made me feel really comfortable. You make everyone who comes to our clinics feel really comfortable, and you are such a gem. And we're really, really happy to call you a member of our Street Dog Coalition family. So,
Thank you. Thank you so much. It means the world to me.
yay! You are so welcome, Meredith. And I want to thank all of our listeners for tuning in live. I want to thank everyone who's listening to a replay of this episode on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. It really, really helps us raise awareness about the work that we're doing. And it's such a great opportunity. This podcast is a great opportunity for us to highlight the efforts of individuals like you, Meredith. So big thanks again for joining me. You said a number of times in this episode, that's a different conversation for a different day. So I'm looking forward to having you back on this podcast.
Oh, thank you. That'd be awesome.
Yay! You're so welcome, Meredith. I will let you get back to your awesome life. And I look forward to connecting with you again soon.
All right, thank you. Thanks a lot, Derry. It was a lot of fun.
Yay! Take care, Meredith. Thank
Okay,
you.
all right. Bye-bye. Bye, everybody. Bye.